about the history of English on Wednesday, we talked about the printing press, beginnings of standardization and prescription. So it kind of follows that nicely to that. He's going to back up a little bit and start talking about writing systems and when those came about and the different kinds of systems we have. So I'll let Logan take it away.
Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. I know it's Friday. You have very many choices in what to do with your morning. So to start with, oh, it already goes back. Okay. I'm just going to go over a few of the different types of writing systems that the world's languages use. And not all languages have a writing system, and some languages share writing systems, like the various different dialects of Arabic all use the Arabic, called Nabjad, and Persian also uses that same writing system. But to start with, I wanted to define a grapheme. You guys have probably, I hope you've covered phonemes and morphemes. How do I this on? Oh yeah, focus. A grapheme is what in writing systems is analogous to a morpheme or a phoneme. So it's the smallest meaningful contrastive unit in a writing system. So like, I don't know, rock paper. Hold on. Anyway. Thanks for being patient, everyone.
All right, I do this too.
So, like, the letter A, you guys might write here is like that or whatever, but that's an it's a vowel sound. But like, just that, just the tail of the A, that's not a grapheme, because in English, it doesn't have a meaningful meaning. Whereas individual letters do. And I'll get into a little bit later how alphabets, especially the English alphabet, is kind of weird because we have like, oh, sorry. Anything bad? No, not really. Because we have like, which in the IPA is that, right? We have a lot of things called digraphs, which are weird and the IPA attempts to solve, but anyway, I'll get right into it. So alphabets, English is an example that you guys already know and use all the time. Most of you anyway, I assume. And it consists of a set of graphemes. In this case, they're called letters, right? That represent phonemes within the spoken language. So English is really, like I said, nowhere near perfect in its one-to-one sound correspondence. We have things like judge, right? Which is two different representations of ja. We have truck, sorry for my terrible handwriting, which sometimes if I'm like really bored in one of my linguistics classes, I'll write truck, which sounds the same. It's weird. But that's what the IPA attempts to solve, right? Is that you want that one-to-one sound correspondence, so we don't have nonsense like this between different languages. The first fully phonemic script was the Phoenician script. And that's actually what gave the Greek alphabet alpha and beta, which is where we get the word alphabet. So the first two letters in the Phoenician script, I think they meant like house and ox or something. I don't remember which one is which. But the Greeks took alpha and beta from the Phoenicians, and then we got the order from that. So I have a little thing that Dr. Jones showed me called Fredkin's Evolution of Alphabets. And it's just a cool site with a bunch of little animations showing how different alphabets develop. So I forgot to mention cuneiform, but this is essentially the precursor to the Phoenician alphabet. And it's just a little, I mean, do you guys need me to zoom at all, or are you good?
Keep redoing it too. So, yeah, look way up there at the top and watch it evolve. So there we go.
Can I be quiet?
It's not doing this.
Oh, well, anyway, I'll keep this in so you guys can see the next one. But Phoenician character set was found in the Sinai Peninsula around 1500 BC. Or sorry, these are the Proto-Sinaitic peninsulas. So this is what immediately came before the Phoenician character set. So you can see how they're moving down and evolving, adding different letters. But see how they started off? They started off as pictograms or pictographs, so like pictures, right? And they're slowly moving towards a less direct or representative form. And here's how the Phoenician character set turned into the Greek alphabet. A bunch of letters, because Greek has more phonemes. There you go. So those are already recognizable at the top, a few of them, like the A and the E. Kind of the H, depends. They look a little similar. The Greek one, obviously way similar because it's later in history. We can recognize all the capital letters. And then, let's just go straight to the Latin characters now. So, this gives a little timeline. It shows how stuff moves, where stuff's added and scooted over, and the different cultures that use these. Those turn from Greek into Latin. G turns into G, moves over. Different Latin. Y moves over here. Z moves over here. Y comes from E. U is created. Y, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a few, as we get into the more modern European languages, they had different sounds that required sort of, diacritics to change the sounds of them, or to represent the sounds. But yeah, so that's a little bit of alphabet. So, alphabets. The next one I'm going to go over are called alphabets. And in the same way that the word alphabet comes from alpha beta, abjad comes from the first 4 letters of, not modern, but an ancient form of Arabic. So the order of the letters in the Arabic alphabet at one time was abjada. So did you guys cover triconsonant roots at all?
No.
Okay, so I had a morphology class. There's this cool thing called the triconsonant root, which is like, so, do you want to write bigger? That's helpful? Okay. I can also zoom. There we go. So, the Semitic languages, so Arabic, Hebrew, languages like that, have what's called a triconsonant root.
Any speakers of any of those languages?
Arabic, Hebrew, anything? No? Okay. Well, I took one quarter of Arabic, and I loved it, but I didn't have time to finish it. We get back into it in grad school. But they use, so rather than like, I don't know, like senseless as the root sense, and then negating or less suffix, they use triconsonantal roots. So kutaba has to do with writing. That's why I chose this one. And you add vowels to change the word. So kutaba has to do with writing. It's not a word by itself. But, so like, kataba means to write. Kitab means book. Kutub means books. So they don't just slap an S. What? Oh, sorry. They don't just slap an S on the end like we do for plurals. Actually, the vowels change. And then maktab means office. So a place where you might write. And you can see that the kutub is still preserved there. They just add occasionally other consonants, stuff like that. Yeah.
So does every word have those three letters in it, or is it just like their words always originate from?
Their words always originate from the third consonant root.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, there's tons of
Different
words.
forms.
Right, yeah. So kutub just has to do with writing. So there are other like eating, sleeping,
Oh, okay.
all the things like that. Yeah. But Hebrew and Arabic both have. Oh, sorry. So I forgot to mention. So abjads are kind of like alphabets, but they only represent consonants. So what?
Just write that word,
Oh, abjad. So to write a word in Arabic or Hebrew, you essentially just write the consonants, and if you're a fluent speaker, you know where the vowels go by context. So there's usually, are these? Oh, they're not, okay. So I'll just show you my examples. So these are, I think they're called unmarked or something, I don't quite remember. But, so these dots are actually part of the consonant letters. And to add vowels, to sort of fully vowelize the word, you would have to have a whole bunch of things called harakat, or they're called nikud in Hebrew. And that pretty much only happens in the Quran, the Bible, and like teaching materials for learning Arabic. Because this is just kind of like what native speakers have agreed on to not vowelize. And you can tell by context like where certain vowels are supposed to go. And the thing with Arabic, and I didn't look at this for Hebrew, but Arabic is what's called an impure abjad, because short consonants and long vowels are actually letters themselves. And then gemination, consonant length, and pretty much all the short vowels are added by a diacritics, or a little shape, below and above the consonant letters. Anybody have any questions on abjads? No? Cool. Okay. Moving right along, syllabaries. So, a syllabary is a set of graphemes, again, where each character represents an entire syllable. So, Japanese is an example of a syllabary, right? You have individual, some people call them letters, they're really not letters, they're characters, yeah, for like K, things like that. And only two of the four writing systems that Japanese uses are actually syllabaries. So kanji is not a syllabary, even though some might be only one syllable, they're usually not. So only hiragana and katakana are. So those are the two syllable writing systems, and then Romaji is not either because that's more an alphabet. But another one that you guys may not know the syllabary is Cherokee, So let me pull it up real quick. Our own Dr. Vida gave a really cool talk on Cherokee, and he explained a ton of really cool stuff. We talked about the writing system, we talked about the history of the language, and there we go. So I'm totally stealing his PowerPoint. I'm just going to do it. So this is Sequoia, who he was a Cherokee who actually independently came up with this syllabary. And there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff about demographics and where the language families came from. There we go. So, syllabaries work way better with languages that have a fewer number of possible syllables. So, English would suck as a syllabary because you would there's like in excess of 10,000 possible syllables in English. You just couldn't do it because you have to have an individual symbol for each possible syllable, not just like the most commonly used ones. So you can see here in Cherokee, there's a ton. There's like 40 something, I think, maybe more. But they have, they have a couple more phonemes than we do, like ta and stuff. But each individual character just represents that syllable. And syllables, like as you guys remember, syllables can be just one consonant, or are there any vowels here? Just vowels?
The first one.
Yeah, the first one, ah, ooh up there, o, e. Yeah, the vowels are at the top. Anyway, so of course, allowed sort of consonant-vowel combinations are dictated by individual languages. So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of syllables in the Cherokee syllabary that we don't have in English, so it's harder for us to pronounce. It's possible, but it's harder. Yeah, there's a bunch of really cool stuff too. If you guys want me to put that PowerPoint up on Canvas, I can do that. Just if you want to look through it. It's a lot more than just writing systems, but that's what I'm focusing on. Last one. Any questions on syllabaries? Cool. Yes. What?
Sequoia's syllabary looks like some of the symbols were based on the Latin alphabet, where they
Right.
So they were adapted, borrowed. He had exposure to.
Right. Oh yeah, he was, I believe, English white man, whatever you call it, educated. But no, there were no like missionaries that came in and were like, make this so we can literarize the Cherokee. No, he just came with all that stuff. Really cool. But yeah, there's definitely some basis on character sets he'd been previously exposed to. Anything else? Cool. Okay. So last one. I have more examples. One second. Are called Amidas. I will write that down because I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, like I said, Japanese syllabary, partially. Some of the writing systems they use. Cherokee syllabary. There's a bunch of other syllabaries. Abagidas are similar, but different. They're also known as syllabic alphabets because those syllabaries have one character for one syllable. Abagidas take one character and it's usually a sort of a base form, people like to call it, where something will mean like, I don't know, like, so like this will mean, I don't know, la, right? So the base vowel would be ah, and then if you added like a little tail, that would be lay, and if you added a circle on top, it would be lu, things like that. So you have the base form of just that circle, and then you add. And they're not really considered diacritics, they're just parts of the letter that modify the vowel, but are all related. So like in Japanese, I should get an example, but does anyone know Japanese here? So you know, like between ko, ke, and ka, there's no, like you can't really, you would never know that there's k sounds, right? Unless you learn Japanese. But with abugidas, you can tell there's like a base form of the letter, and then stuff is added on or changed to change the vowel. So I have an example from Hindi that uses the Devanagari, called an alphabet. It's not really an alphabet. And so they have vowel diacritics. So there's a bunch of different vowels in Hindi. But this is the important row that I want you guys to look at. So this upside down H looking thing. And Devanagari uses sort of like a line on the top of everything. Do you guys watch any like Bollywood movies? A lot of the languages in the Indian Peninsula, like tons use Devanagari writing system. Not all of them are Hindi, obviously, but this is just a Hindi example. So this upside down H thing is pa, and then if you add this line, feminine, so pa. If you move the line over, and then I assume using one of the vowel diacritics up there. But P, and then P, feminine, ooh, and then you switched around. So, essentially, you can tell that all these kind of look like that upside down H, right? So the upside down H is the, and I'm sure it's probably not after or whatever. But you're adding things to the base form to change the vowel. And that's what abugidas are all about. Another question, does anyone happen to speak Tigrinya in here? Does anyone know what that is? It's one of the languages of Ethiopia. And I will pull it up. Where it is? There. So, I actually was tabling for the linguistics club back in fall quarter. Just at one, like I don't know, Discovery Days or something. And this girl came up to our table, and she was interested in linguistics, and we had a little like map of Washington and the U.S. and the world, and we were just giving people pens and saying like, here, just make it, like, put a dot where you're from. And I think she was one of our only African students. But she was from Ethiopia, she spoke a language called Tigrinya. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, like, you know, I'm a linguistic nerd, so I was like, can you write my name in Tigrinya? And I just realized as I was preparing for this lecture that Tigrinya is Navigita. Because, as you can see, can everyone see, or do I need to scroll more? See the charts? So, totally butchering it, is kind of the U shape. And sometimes it's a little different. It's not perfect. But like the double H sound is kind of that upside down pitchfork trident thing. This one, ba, is a really good example. Because you can see, let me scroll that a little bit. They change the tail, or they add dots, or 2 dots, but that shape is almost always preserved. And so that's, again, that's how you can tell it's the ba set, almost. And unfortunately, she actually wrote my name, and it was a beautiful handwritten thing, you know, just pen, whatever, but I thought it was really cool. I couldn't find that. My room's a total mess right now. But I can type in Tigrinya on here. And so it's not actually in Tigrinya, but I can just type my name. So if you see, I type L. And which L is that? So this is L. And when I add the O, it goes to L. So L, so I'm guessing the inherent vowel is schwa then. And then I can do G. Let's find G. G. So, yeah, there it is again, the schwa. So that's low G. And then if I do the A, and then and I'm pretty sure for, I'm not sure, because I know like in Japanese there's which is just syllable final. And I'm not sure if Tigrinya has, what's it called? Vowel, echo vowels, right? Do you guys cover that at all? So, or what do you use? Or just something else?
For the, like a Slavic, yeah, one second.
Okay, anyway, it's cool. It's just kind of like if the syllable formation in the language that you're trying to like say another word in doesn't match, you sort of add vowels.
We did it, oh, Suturaiku, we did.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
Japanese syllable
Right,
version.
yeah. So that's, I've heard of that referred to as echo vowels, but, does anyone want to type their name and see what it looks like in Tigrinya? What's your name?
Bettina,
Okay,
Beettina.
so I have a feeling that the two T's might just be so, where's that B? There it is. So, B, yeah. Where'd the T go? T, and then not. Yeah, so that one's easy because it just has constant vowel, something else. Mine's weird. But yeah, so that's just kind of how they work. And there's, you know, it's definitely not as expressive as an alphabet or anything. You can still fully express the language. It's just a really interesting, I think, cool way of representing spoken language. Yeah, okay. Moving on. Anyone have any questions about any of the writing systems? Or other examples? I'll provide a few. The last one that I'm going to cover is logographic, which is my particular specialty because I've studied Chinese for a while. And some people call it logographic, which I think is kind of a misnomer because it's really not. Dr. Vida calls it an irregular syllabic writing system because each character does represent a syllable, but it also represents a lot more than that. It's also sort of called logosyllabic because it has the logograph element and the syllabic element. So a character generally represents, like I said, one syllable of spoken Chinese, and it might be a word on its own, or it might be part of a word, like a compound. And I have sort of classification examples of the, I want to say 5 different kinds of characters. So the first that I learned anyway were the sort of non-phonetic pictographs. So, oh gosh, what happened? Did I turn them on? Yeah, there we go. Nope,
Uh-oh.
sounds not.
Can we do the words?
Okay, well,
I'll work on it.
thank you. So, 5 different kinds. As I said, the first ones are pictographic. So they came from the most ancient sort of form of, there we go, now, yes, whatever, I'll just finish it here. So, in Mandarin, so the sun kind of looks sunnish, kind of started off rounder. And yue means moon, and it's, you could see how it maybe would look a little moonish, maybe, you know? And these are the modern forms that are changed quite a bit from the original script. The next kind is the non-phonetic ideographs. So you have characters like Zhang and Xia, which mean up and down, and among other things, top, on top of, bottom of, things like that. But so they're a little bit more abstract in terms of their representation. You know, these ones happen to point up and down, but not all of this type of character do that. They just don't look like the sun and the moon type stuff. The next one are phonetic complexes in things like, hold on, I'm gonna figure. So this is ma, which means mother, or mom. And this, so it's split in half. So this half, generally a lot of, this is what he said, 80% of Chinese characters? I don't remember. Anyway, a big majority of Chinese characters are set up like this, where you have the phonetic sort of help on the one side, and the meaning on the other. So this by itself, just this half, is pronounced ma, and it means horse. This is nu, which means woman. So it doesn't mean horsewoman. It means ma, because this is the meaning component, and this is just the sort of pronunciation helper. And there's like qing, which anyway, some are hard. But so this is the qing sound, right? And then this means sun, so like bright, clear, things like that. The next one is phonetic ones that are sort of borrowed for other purposes. So you have, so like in English, jacket. And there is a word, like a native Mandarin word for jacket, but what's become really popular is, jiake. Sounds a little jackety, but it's not. It's just straight phonetic borrowing. And this happens a lot with loan words. So like another one would be cafe, coffee. And that's even worked its way into, like the first way I learned how to say the color brown was coffee colored, so cafe means color. And that's just a really common way of loaning words. And also a lot of sort of foreign names are done this way, where you just sort of, sometimes you can pick characters that like represent cool stuff but also sound like your name, but sometimes you just want it to not mean anything. So for a while, Coca-Cola, which in Mandarin you say Coca-Cola, meant biting the wax tadpole. And then people were like, this is weird, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh God, sorry. And now it means like, I don't know, delicious in your mouth or something, whatever. Something ridiculous like that. So still advertising, but not quite as ridiculous as bike wax. And then another one, so there's a ton, are what I'm going to call logical aggregates. So, means wood or tree. And if you throw a bunch of them together, I want to take a guess at what those two mean together? Trees, forest, right? It's in LING. Yeah. So a bunch of trees, forest. Those ones, I think, make the most sense, at least from a non-native learner's perspective. And one that I actually didn't know about, the source I was looking at called them transference. So that's when you have a native character that takes on a new meaning, which happens a lot in English too, right, with words. That's the same way. So, lung looks like a net, right, you could say. Kind of got the cross hatches in the frame. And that has turned into internet, net, in modern Mandarin. So there are a couple that's not as common, but it's pretty wildly productive. You can just do stuff like that randomly.
How many?
Huh.
How many characters are there approximately?
Oh, yeah. So logographic systems for people who are used to other writing systems, really hard to learn. Most people say you achieve literacy at 4,000 to 5,000 characters. Like basic literacy is 3,000, and like college level literacy would be closer to 5. I think the biggest dictionary ever compiled was like 40,000 characters. Because you have to have an individual character. And there's a couple different reasons. But yeah. And I mean, I don't know. It's once you actually get there, it's not as scary as it sounds, maybe now. But it's definitely intimidating when you come in and you're like, oh, it's just letters, right? And you have to learn a different letter. It seems like at first for every single word that you learn. It's a lot of memorization. Yeah, that's it for that section. Any questions on logographic writing systems? So Chinese is really old, right? So they have had a lot of influence on a lot of other Asian countries. So Japanese kanji is borrowed from Chinese, and they have a number of differences because they have sort of made it their own. But I mean, Korean used to be written with Chinese characters before Hangul. Vietnamese used to be written with Chinese characters. They have a very huge influence on that whole region in terms of writing systems because paper, characters, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Any questions? No? Cool. Moving on. I have a little bit about orthography and pronunciation. Dr. Dennis said you guys already covered this, so I'll run through it really quickly. There's a really cool person who works in our department. His name is Jordan Sandoval. And before she was married, her name was Jordan Brewer. And she did a whole, it's not down,
Do it manually.
whatever. Well, no, yeah, that's fine.
You don't want
She wrote her dissertation on phonetic reflexes, orthographic characteristics, and lexical representation. Sounds like a bunch of crazy stuff. I read it, it's really cool. You guys don't have to. It's not to be disparaging, but it's like more higher level stuff than just a 201 class would want to worry about.
She's a Western undergrad.
Yeah, also she finished her undergrad here. where's this University of Arizona?
Yep.
Yeah, but so, she's awesome. If you continue with 6, you'll have fun talks with her. She's super cool. But she argued that the way we spell things has an effect on how we pronounce things. So like double letters and things like that are actually like down to the millisecond longer. But I thought it was really cool. I'm very interested in sort of how the way we write and the way we speak intersect. I know you guys talked about sort of silent letters in Middle English, maybe like often, and the dropped L from Middle English too. So we have like, calf, right? Then we say calf here. No. But wolf. Does anyone say wolf? You don't have to say, because people might make fun of you for it. But there's a very real stigma attached to dropping the L when you're not supposed to. And I think it's not really the same effect as adding the L when you're not supposed to, because no one I know says help. But there are plenty of people I know who say wolf or wolf, smaller L. So in Middle English, we dropped this L. With Old English, we kept it, dropped it. And then with the rise of literacy, people were like, oh, there's an L there. And that's sort of spelling pronunciation, but there's an L there. Let's say wolf. And that's just sort of gradually added to stigma of deleting it when you shouldn't. Transliteration is also really difficult because of this. From language to language, so like strike, you can't just say strike in Japanese, you have to say sukuraiku, because of that sort of mismatched phonetic representation. And spelling pronunciation has sort of been there for a long time. It's really controversial at times. Different people have advocated for spelling reform, fixing, deleting letters we don't use, adding letters we do use, and I think that's just sort of a function of how ridiculous English is anyway, the whole truck thing that I talked about earlier. I just have a couple examples of English words with common spelling pronunciations. It's a lot of L's, so like, I don't know. Salmon, right? Not salmon. Although, there's a guy, his name is Joe Salmon. Yeah, you have words like often or often. Just a bunch.
How about S-A-L-V-E?
Oh, yeah. Right.
But it's always been salve, but now it's becoming salve because people haven't heard it.
This is that literacy thing. There's that L. We gotta pronounce it. There's a bunch of stuff. Like, I have actually never seen this word spelled. Oh gosh. You know what that is? Middle. Yeah. English is ridiculous. I know. Like my least favorite language.
You know what that means? Littles? It's a good Appalachian word. Here.
It's the thing, right?
And it can just be used more generally like food, but it's a kind of pork
No, that's Scrabble, never mind.
It is usually like, but
Oh, really?
little, and now it's been spelled Vittles.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
re-spelled, I mean,
Sure,
not
sure, sure.
both ways, because people don't recognize this.
Right. But, yeah. And, yeah. Foul doesn't foul, like. Psalms. Sounds, no, yeah, just lots of like that. Yeah, just things like that. It's a lot of historical influence on language. As a really has a lot to do with spelling pronunciation. Okay, moving on. I want to talk a little about something called literacy bias, because we were talking about writing systems. So the idea behind literacy bias essentially is that if you are literate as a culture, you are better. And so it definitely has its roots in ethnocentrism. Does everyone know what ethnocentrism is? Yeah, cool. But it sort of goes along with the idea that, like, if you're, better developed as a culture, that, oh, you have a writing system, and so, oh, you're better developed than culture without a writing system. Even though their culture, that culture without a writing system is as full-fledged, and their language is even as expressive, maybe in different ways, but still as expressive as somebody with a writing system. So I don't know, do you guys ever think like, oh, English-speaking cultures are just kind of farther along? Anyone ever thought that? It's okay if you have. Hopefully, you'll learn a little bit more while you're Western. But yeah, that was a really commonly held belief before globalization, before people started interacting with each other on a really global scale and realizing, oh, like, maybe we can't just, call them like savages and call it good, because that's really not okay. But yeah, it definitely had a huge effect on the sort of perception of cultural worth of a lot of smaller cultures that maybe didn't have, the ability to go plunder or whatever, things like that, sort of spread themselves out really far. And that's also been a really, for me personally, kind of contentious thing about, like, missionaries going into smaller communities and making a writing system for that language, primarily so they can translate, whatever religious texts they're using, personally. And I don't know how I feel about that. I think on the one hand, I don't know, we talked about this in a class I took last year, and I was very conflicted, so I don't know, maybe I'll ask you guys, do you think it's maybe right or okay, whatever you want to answer, that, like, we should, like, someone with a more developed writing system should come in and, like, help a smaller culture? Anyone? Anyone have any more thoughts? Or just no? I mean, I agree, but it happened.
There's often some other goal, like
Yeah.
translating the Bible or
Yeah.
converting Christianity, so there aren't that many examples of people just developing a writing system,
Right.
except linguists and anthropologists in the early 20th century did a lot of that, like usually it was, I'm going to go study your language, let's make a writing system together, and then I'm going to go away.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of what we're talking about in that class I was mentioning. It's very conflicting for me personally, because I love language and I love studying it, all this stuff. I love nerding out, but it never really occurred to me, sheltered in my little bubble, that maybe people didn't want to share their culture, felt like it was too much a part of them to share with outsiders in any definition of the word outsider. So I don't know, that was a really interesting thing for me to sort of confront with myself. Moving on. You guys don't really talk about sign language, right?
Not much.
Okay, so talk a little bit about sign language. And hopefully I won't get anything horribly wrong. There are a bunch of different sign languages. There's not just ASL. And ASL is not even the first sign language. So ASL is closely related to and kind of based off French sign language. But there's a bunch. There's American Sign Language, there's British Sign Language, there's French Sign Language, there's Chinese Sign Language, which is really cool. I actually wrote a little paper on it. And they definitely have a very different deaf community, or kind of almost lack thereof, over in China, from what I can tell from my research. There's also something called SE, or Sign Exact English, which is not the same thing as ASL at all. So ASL has a whole different grammar, different sort of sign phonotactic rules. There's a lot of different sort of phonemic representations that you use with the face and body positioning and stuff like that, that are sort of covered, that's okay to say, by other phonetic things in spoken languages. But Sign Exact English is, to my knowledge, sort of an attempt to, it was a maybe misguided attempt at oralization education. So Sign Exact English is signs, but within English word order and grammar. So it's not ASL, it's a sign language, but it's not ASL. I want to make that clear. And there's a lot of stigma surrounding deafness and the deaf community just because we live in such an oral world, like I'm talking to you guys right now. And a lot of the stuff is, like even our architecture is built for oral culture. I was actually watching this video last night. Has anyone heard of, I'm going to butcher this name, Gallaudet University? Is that how you say it? Gallaudet. So in DC, it's a totally deaf, like set up for deaf people university. And apparently they did either a design or a redesign, and like actually thought, like kept deafness in mind when they were making the architecture. I thought was really cool. Another issue with sign languages, not issue, but like there's usually no written representation. And so glosses can sometimes maybe not reflect exactly what someone who's signing might be saying. So translation and glossing are definitely two different things, especially when it comes to sign languages. Yeah, English loanwords are often borrowed through fingerspelling. And yeah, like I said, the grammatical system that ASL uses is quite a bit different from English. So it's not just Sign Exact English, like I said. According to my source here, ASL has verbal agreement and a spectral marking, and has a directive system of forming inclusive classifiers, which I think is crazy. That's so cool.
Do you know ASL for studying?
Yeah, is this sounding
The class.
familiar at all? Or
Classifiers, yeah, do you have examples of the classifiers, like,
Um,
that you could,
if you want to say that like something's around the corner, you have to set up the corner and then you have to show that it goes around the corner.
ooh,
So you have to like set up the two different things, or if you want to say like a person's over there, you have to set up the person and then say like she over there. Like you can't, it's, the classifiers are hard.
yeah, that's so cool though. So will those be analogous to Chinese software?
There's some, yeah,
Yeah.
there's some like small round object or something like that too. So if you're talking about, say, a coin,
I think there's a sign for coin.
but then is it incorporated, or maybe I'm thinking of like Nicaraguan Sign Language.
Oh, yeah. maybe.
But, that you, yeah, is there a classifier for
Yeah.
small
So, like,
round object?
If you would like, you would set it up and then you would set it up in a certain spot and then point to it.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
And if you don't have one, then you could say something like, a small and really cute button.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a button on, but I can actually do a
Oh,
classifier
okay.
for a button or a pin or something like that.
Okay. Do you say like one classifier button, or you just say one button and you're using the classifier?
I'm pretty sure you would do,
I don't think you say that it's the top.
Yeah. it's
Okay.
not like the-
yeah.
Oh, it's not like that,
It's
okay.
like an actual can shape, so. if
Oh,
you
that's
wanted to do,
cool.
like,
Yeah.
I think coins or buttons that are small, you could
Sure.
just do it in your hand. Or, button, or you could do like long hair where, you
Mhm.
follow your hands down or to where your hair is. Just
Okay.
small, short, like medium, long.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, no, the only sort of experience I have with deafness and sign languages was that paper I wrote last year on, I wrote a paper on Chinese sign language. And I don't know, it's just fascinating, it's really cool.
Just to tie into some of the things we were talking about Wednesday about standardization and the dictionary making for English.
Oh, yeah.
So that I think dictionaries are harder, have traditionally been hard to produce for sign languages, right? So there were, used to be illustrations of the signs of someone, a person producing the sign, and then various ways of trying to convey the movement involved. But that's really been transformed with electronic ways to do electronic dictionaries now, where you can have little videos of people doing the sign and showing the movement. So that's huge for sign languages, and I think transforms the dictionary making and have the effect of standardizing it in the same kind of way. Then you can see maybe fewer variations across dialects because of that.
And yeah, I talked a little about standardization in CSL when I wrote that. And there have been several studies done on deafness in China. And a lot of people, according to a couple, not wholly representative surveys that I found, studies that I found, a lot of people wanted a standardized language, but there were a lot of inherent difficulties in that. Like, there's a couple sort of centers of deafness where, there's still a really big, way huge stigma on any kind of disability. Deafness is, I found that there's almost like a disability hierarchy, and deaf people are not as disabled as other people. I think it's
China.
yeah, in China. But so there's still schools there, but it was a lot of just special education for all differently abled people. And only recently have they started, specific deaf schools. But anyway, like I was saying, there's a couple sort of different centers, a lot of main cities where a lot of people, maybe who have deaf children move in, so that they can go to those schools. And they have developed different sort of dialectical signs for different things. And so one issue, with any standardization project, right, is which vocab do you use? Do you use the southern stuff? Do you use the eastern stuff? I don't know, just as an example. And that's just an inherent difficulty of any standardization project, especially so with a sign language where it's maybe not as well understood by hearing community. Yeah, anything you want to add about sign language? I think that's.
We'll probably talk a little more next week about Nicaraguan Sign Language as,
Oh, yeah.
as an example of a Creole and a sign language, so we'll come back to that.
I don't think I can fit in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna go to texting. What? Oh yeah. So, does anyone not text? Didn't think so. Yeah, exactly. And so this is a bit of an older book. It's called Texting the Curriculum Art, which I don't know. I don't text like that, but whatever. Some people might. Dear Crystal, awesome linguist. If you guys are all interested in what I finished off the lecture with, totally read this book and a couple of other books. They're really good. But
We've seen a few clips of him, the old linguist and the Shakespeare.
yeah, he's well trained.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
he speaks Welsh as well.
Yeah, it's super cool. But so texting is really interesting to me personally, and I don't know. I just as soon as I found that Dave Crystal had done a couple books, and there's a couple other people at various universities who have looked at sort of online communication, CMC as they call it, computer mediated communication. I think it's kind of an outdated term, but I just think it's really cool. It's fascinating. And I want to talk about it a little bit. So we have, I don't know, so show of hands, who shortens stuff a lot? Just like personally. Yeah, just you? No one else, really? There, okay, yeah. Who is totally like, I don't like the term, but like a grammar Nazi about it. Like who is very like full sentences. Yeah, okay, capitalization, all that stuff. Yeah.
How about your parents? How many of them?
Oh yeah, parents?
Shortening?
Anyone
Yeah.
hip with the lingo, as they might call it? It's definitely a big cultural gap and sort of a weird thing to cross. Like if you are texting a friend and that's a mismatch, it's really weird, right? Like if you're used to just being like, hey, what's up? And they're like, I am doing very well, thank you, period. It's weird. And I'm just super fascinated. I want to do more research on sort of the effects of punctuation. I know probably everyone has felt this, like if you, I don't know, to say something, a period makes it seem way more serious, right? Than it otherwise would be. It's like a freaky change. It's really weird. So just stuff like that is so cool that you really is a very much a different kind of nuance from spoken language. So you can sort of like just say a thing, just leave it hanging, or you can say a thing, and just the way that's represented in sort of online communication is different and really cool. There are a couple different sort of aspects of texting that I'm just going to, from this book, that I'm going to go over. And I've already kind of mentioned them in other writing systems. But so logograms, or logograms, I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, however they're pronounced. Dave Crystal defines them as the use of single letters, numerals, and textbook symbols to represent words, parts of words, or even noises associated with actions. And so, let's see. But like, I don't know, they can go from really short to really long, depending on like how big they're getting and like what they represent too. Pictograms, so emoji is a really good example of pictograms, or emoticons, just like the English sideways ones, are another form of ID graphic representation. Pictograms, though, like everyone knows emoji, they look like the actual things they're representing. The pizza emoji means pizza, or the smiley face means smile, and stuff like that.
What's an example of a logogram?
Oh, hold on, let me find it. I'm trying to remember.
Or is that like number 8 to represent ATE, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
number 2 to represent
Great.
TO, or, yeah,
That would be an example.
a logogram.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And something else, everyone's heard of acronyms, right? Has anyone heard of initialisms? Right? Some people, if they're real sticklers for correctness, will make sure that you know the difference. Generally, the way I've seen it is that initialisms are non-pronounceable, and acronyms are, but they're generally always like a phrase reduced to the initial letter. And they can range from anywhere from one word, so like Y or N for yes or no, right, to elements of compound words, so like GF or BF for girlfriend, boyfriend type thing, to words in like phrases or even like elliptical sentences. So like NBD for no big deal, JK, OMG, things like that. Things that it's weird to say out loud almost, I think. I mean, there's tons more examples. I think Dr. Johnson, you guys went over them, but like FYI, ASAP, RIP. They're and they span history for sure. Like PM, post meridian, Latin, like 2 p.m., whatever. That's a technical initialism. And there are some that even like they aren't that old, but they're just so common that they've turned into common nouns. So I think you guys covered like radar and laser, right? But we don't spell them with capital letters anymore, but they do. Like laser means light amplification by the stimulated emission radiation.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah. And radar is like radio detection and ranging. But I would also be really interested to see like how that occurs. Because I don't know, laser and radar like aren't things I use in my everyday life. I don't know how they could turn in that, but I don't know, I think it's really interesting. There's quite a few just sort of shortenings and abbreviations, like weekdays. You just like 1, 2, wed, whatever you take off the day. And there's even shorter ones like on class finder, right? They only have space for one character, so if there's it's an R. And if they have room for 2 characters, like on other places I've seen it, TH, and then just T is Tuesday. But it also happens with like class names too. Like we're in a LING class, right? Linguistics is way too long to say all the time. But like bio, chem, amp, math. Math is from mathematics, so it just happened a while earlier than we were maybe aware of. Standards for texting are a really big thing because there are kind of none. There's certainly no governing body to say like the Académie Française or something for French for texting. You can't be like, oh, you can say OMG but not OMB for Oh My Buddha or something, something like that. But emoji is actually really interesting. Or I don't know. Emoji actually came from, I think, Japanese for. Here, let me check really quick before I run out of time. Picture character, a emoji. But there's no. I think emoticons are actually separate, just from emoticons, like from emotion, the word emotion. So they're separate, but it's kind of interesting that they sound similar and represent similar things. Emoji are really interesting because the Unicode consortium actually dictates which emoji get allowed and created. So do you guys see that whole like, I think it was Taco Bell was like, why is there no taco emoji? And everyone, some people were upset about it. Didn't really care because I don't Taco Bell, whatever. But so there's actually a governing body for emoji, where there is none. It's just the will of the people for texting. And last thing I want to mention is it's really interesting looking at sort of the English and American influence of communication on the internet in other languages. So does everyone know like how the internet started? Pretty much, right? It was a DARPA project. It was military research. And now we have this big, wonderful internet thing. But it started off here, so it started off using the Latin character set and English. And so even now, with the spread of globalism and sort of translation and all this kind of stuff, there's still a ton of Latin character set use in other languages. So I have a couple examples here of abbreviations in 11 languages. So Chinese is the first one. So jia means add or plus. So plus you, jia you, jiao. Jiao literally means add gas, like gasoline. So that's what you yell, like instead of come on, jiao, like a small event or something. But there's like numerical representations, and we even have like loanwords. So like the standard way to say goodbye in Mandarin is 再见, like I'll like see you again. But eight is ba, and you say bye bye, right? It's a loanword, and they've actually sort of rhymed it with letters, and this happens a lot. It's actually really cool in Chinese. But they also have taken, so this pinyin is sort of a romanization method. And it's really interesting because the mainland of China uses pinyin, and Taiwan uses something called bokolomo, which is actually, it looks almost sort of katakana-ish, but that's a syllabary, where this is just alphabetical sort of romanization. I don't know, there's a lot of really cool stuff. I think it's interesting that they've shortened stuff in the Latin character set. When you can definitely, you can text in Chinese, but you have to put it in, if you're on mainland, I think, with what looks like an English keyboard. I think that's a really interesting effect of globalization. And I mean, there's ones in Czech, there's ones in Dutch, there's tons in Dutch, Finnish, French. Does anyone know French here? Can you say that?
Till tomorrow.
Right.
Or like see you tomorrow.
Yeah. And so, act, do,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's cool. Like, people are super creative and they come up with this stuff. But even like the French ones, I'm sure weren't thought up by the Academy Française. Like, it's just people just texting, just doing cool stuff. On the French ones, German ones, Italian, blah 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 stuff. Like there's in tons of different languages. There are a bunch of them. That's all I got. Any questions? Are you guys good?